Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar series. As always, I'm your host, Brad Ken, and we're excited to bring you today's presentation. I'm not going to lie, it's the end of May in Arizona and it's only 72 degrees outside, so life doesn't get much sweeter than this. But it's only a matter of time before we get back to our miserable 120-degree summer. So let me at least bask in this weather as long as we can. So the webinar title, let's talk about that for a second. Should you fire your CMO? We got some feedback. It scared a few of you, maybe because you're a CMO in the hot seat. Maybe you're a CEO and you have a CMO that you're not sure is performing as he or she should. But if you've been following Vertical Measures over the years, you know that we're all about empowering fellow marketers and CMOs like yourself. So this presentation is really going to be about how to empower your CMO, how to get the most out of your digital marketing strategies, and I'll let John continue when he starts his presentation. So today's webinar is titled, Should You Fire Your CMO? It's presented by our own senior marketing consultant, John Triplett. John has worked on the client-facing side of digital marketing for over 10 years. And during that time, he's witnessed a lot of changes, from the initial boom of social media and the blogging to the foundation-shaking changes of Panda and Penguin Google updates. With the constant evolution of the industry and requirement to adapt, he's motivated to tackle new challenges each day. Originally from Seattle, John relocated to Scottsdale, Arizona in 2010. When he's not in the office, you can find him checking out new restaurants with friends or enjoying all the outdoor activities the Southwest has to offer before we hit that summer month. So before John dives into his webinar, I do have a few notes to go over. This presentation will be available online tomorrow at verticalmeasures.com/webinars. We'll also shoot you an email tomorrow morning with that link. If you have any questions during the webinar, shoot it over to us in the questions tab, and we'll try to run it by John during the Q&A session at the end. Make sure you download our free, full-color, critically acclaimed book, The Customer Journey, at vert.ms/customer-journey. And finally, we know your time is extremely valuable, but if you have a minute or two after the webinar, we ask that you fill out our quick 5-question multiple choice survey. It really helps us when it comes to planning out future webinar topic and guests. So that's all for me. Please take it away, John.
Thank you, Brad. So as Brad said, my name is John Triplett. I'm a senior marketing consultant here with Vertical Measures. And contrary to what the title might have you believe, I'm not an advocate for firing your CMO. What I am an advocate for is helping to create stronger relationships internally and how to be really successful in that CMO role. And so to business owners and CEOs, we need to be empowering the CMO to be able to make the right decisions. And in order to do that, there are some steps that we want to take to set them up properly. I think that's a little bit of why we're here. I'm sure that we've got some CMOs on the line joining us today, some CEOs and business owners. And one of the reasons behind us looking at this topic is we found that of the members of the C-suite, the CMO usually is the youngest in age and has the shortest tenure. So for a CMO, it can really feel like the part of this CMO of the month as you're changing out this role on a consistent basis. So we want to figure out ways to help get over this and help add to that tenure of the CMO and the success of your overall organization from marketing. Looking at our client results, I show you this not necessarily to talk about ourselves or to brag, but if we look at that lime green color down there in the lower left, this is what we want to look at. We wanted to understand why organizations are failing in their marketing efforts and dive into that and figure out what are some of those commonalities there. And recently we've spoke and worked with a hosting company and a mid-sized software company and a large consumer rewards organization, a large assisted living organization, a large multifamily organization. And from doing hundreds of workshops over the years around the world, this is where we dive into seeing some of these same common denominators amongst these companies that are struggling in, and it really doesn't matter the vertical that they're in. It matters to some of the things that we're still seeing. So what are those things that we find amongst all of these companies that are the same, that they're struggling with? And right off the top, it's a lack of strategy, and a piggyback on that, implementation. If you're not implementing the tactics from your strategy, or the tactics that the agencies that you're working with are helping you strategize, you're really not going to get any kind of traction. So mapping that out and implementing is really key, and that's something that we find common as a common fail point amongst organizations that just really aren't making it. Also, cranking out content. So, at the beginning of when the buzzword of content marketing really took traction in the last, 6, 7, 8 years, and it was just produce content. Well, that is not so much the case anymore. Everybody's cranking out content. We need to be more strategic about the content that we create and where we promote that content. Another common denominator we see here is botched SEO and website migrations. So this can have a major impact on your organic traffic and not implementing the right best practices when it comes to migrating to a new website or just your overall foundational SEO on your site. Another thing that we see to be a common issue is no processes in place. As an agency, we've mapped every single process internally. So now we're more efficient with our partners' budgets and how we apply those. So there's less mistakes made. There's less revisions needed before we go to implementation. So as any organization should follow suit, it's really important to have processes in place across your organization. So let's talk about how to set your CMO up for success. Right off the top, you've got to work together and be clear. Now, from Kimberly and Neil at the Harvard Business, they published this article, and we'll have a few quotes from this and a few other stats from this article that they did. But this quote is, "We believe that a great deal of CMO turnover stems from poor job design. Any company can make a bad hire, but when responsibilities, expectations, and performance measures are not aligned and realistic, it sets a CMO up to fail." So the failure of your CMO really can start from the top. Now, that's not to say that you might have somebody who's just not good at the job or doesn't understand what needs to be done. But really, if you're hiring the right person and designing that role appropriately from the top down, and you're really collaborating together and trying to understand what the CMO is doing and what marketing is doing, you increase the likelihood for success and for your CMO to be successful in their role. So understanding the different types of CMOs is important as well. So this again comes from the same article, Why CMOs Never Last. And here they've identified 3 different types of CMOs. The commercial role is the CMO that we know more traditionally from a more traditional marketing standpoint. And what they do is they typically execute and help in the operations of your marketing to start to meet those goals that you have. But then when we look at the strategy role, this is a CMO that really is developing out the strategy, has a much more hands-on approach to the marketing role as opposed to delegating to different subject matter experts internally. And then we have the enterprise-wide P&L role. Now, this is a role that is a blend of both of those. So from the top, if you understand what type of CMO you're looking for and what their job duties are really going to entail, then you can begin to look for the right person to fill that role. So think about that when you go into hiring and creating a job description for that CMO role in your organization. Here's some of the required skills. So also understanding CMO's got to be pretty versatile, right? They need to know about Marcom. They need to be on top of smarketing. They need to have some degree of knowledge in art and science, and they need to be a data analyst expert. They need to be a team leader. They need to be an HR expert. They have to have strong presentation skills. So we're looking for an individual to fill this role that really does have a lot of tools in the toolbox. So keep that in mind also. Your CMO is really wearing a lot of hats, and their job is quite diverse. So according to a Forrester research, CEOs will fire their CMOs for not mustering the blended skill set they need to personally pull off digital business transformation. So that's another factor here to keep in mind for you CMOs. You really do need to make sure that you have a blended skill set if you want to be successful in the role and be able to meet the goals that the organization has. So to get past that, you need to have a plan. You need to be creating useful content. You need to optimize that content. And for everyone, you need to understand that it takes time. Okay, especially when we're talking about digital marketing outside of paid placement or paid ads, from organic digital marketing, it is the long game. Now, it is extremely beneficial when you implement the right tactics and strategies and have the patience to build that, but understand it takes time. So if you're impatient with the CMO and you're not giving them the time necessary to reach those goals, here again can be another downfall for that position. Understanding that relationships are created with information and not people anymore is also critical here. So for everyone listening, the customer is 57% of the way through their journey before they ever talk to a salesperson. And 67% of that journey is completed through digital channels. So here again, it's important that you're positioning your content and your organization in the right light in order for people to find you as they go through those first steps of engaging with your organization. So where are we going? We're going to look at a bell curve here, and this is how we're looking at the adoption of digital marketing. So with anything, you have those innovators and those early adopters, the people that saw the writing on the wall and got on board early. These are your competitors that are taking up the majority of the market share right now. That is where they fall at, is in this innovation early adopters phase, where we feel like the industry is right now, is in this early majority stage. We're starting to reach the crest of this bell curve. We're still a ways off from that because there's still a lot of companies and organizations that are beginning to understand the importance of this. But right now is the time. If you are not getting your digital marketing strategies in place and really beginning to lead the way with this, and I'm talking to you CEOs, if you're not looking at, and business owners, if you're not understanding the digital marketing landscape and putting effort to that and trying to hire the right people or the right CMO that understands that and can drive your organization forward, you're going to end up in that late majority and that laggards phase on the downside of this bell curve. And that can cost your organization dearly. In fact, you might as well just throw the towel in, because in a decade from now, when everything is digital or 90% of your marketing budget is going to digital, you're going to be way behind the curve. So think about that when it comes to positioning somebody in that CMO role. What I'm saying is you must move now, and it has to be ROI driven. We need to be thinking about budget here and what we're putting into marketing. So when the ROI should really drive your CMO's actions and decisions, and looking at how much your average conversion is, looking at the amount of leads that you're producing, and really the conversion of that and the dollars that marketing brings. Something that's extremely important to be thinking about when allocating budget. CEO, business owner, If your marketing team or your CMO, if you give them a $500,000 this year and they're able to turn that into $2 million in revenue, don't come back to them next year and give them $300,000 and expect the same results. You should double that budget and expect double the results. It's all ROI driven. So how does a CMO lead from here? This is what we call the emotional journey of digital marketing. And I would assume that a lot of you that are attending right now are in that bottom right corner of thinking, who can we blame this on? Because you've gotten started, you've gotten some digital marketing strategies underway, you're beginning to execute on this, but it's difficult. It's a lot of work in order to get to the end result. And in that, what we call the trough of disillusionment there at the bottom, this is where things are overwhelming and you start looking for who to blame it on. And this is where the CMO ends up on the outs. But through strategy and execution, you can really bridge that gap and help eliminate or really reduce the amount of time that you're stuck in that trough of trying to get to those goals and that success. And we're going to talk through and go through some of these strategy tactics and how to execute on these so that as a CMO, you have a better opportunity to bridge that gap. But also CEOs and decision makers, remember, this takes time. Don't be short-sighted with that. So first thing is you need to set up a strategy and you need to share it. And what we mean by that is everyone in your organization should have an idea of what marketing is doing and how marketing impacts their day to day, as well as how they can contribute to marketing. Some of the people inside of your company already know your customers better than everyone else because they talk to them every day. They know your prospects better than everyone else. They know your audience better than everyone else. Tap into that. Make sure that they understand how they can help drive more leads into the business. So here's some of the elements of a digital strategy. We'll talk about foundational elements first. So who is your audience? You need to have personas created so that you know who you're creating content for, where they're consuming that content online. We also need to know about strategy. So what are your strategic initiatives? And these are going to be the output of a strategy, how you go forward and the things that you do, whether it's link building or how much content you're going to create or what types of content you're going to create. And a lot of that is informed by who your audience is. So we want to be creating the right content at the right time for the right people. Also, very established business goals. All right. So, CEO, if you don't have realistic goals set up for marketing and for your CMO, they aren't going to be achieved. CMOs, if the CEO has or the business owner has unrealistic goals and expectations, you need to level set and have that conversation. If you don't and you try to meet these goals that are unrealistic without saying anything, your job is most likely going to be in jeopardy. So think about that. Have those tough conversations. And analysis. So both competitive and current state. If you're not looking at your competitors and what they're doing and doing that kind of analysis, or you're not looking at what your current state is and where your shortcomings are, and putting that up against your competitors, then it's really tough to figure out where you're coming up short and why they're succeeding. So by blending these things together, you start to develop out a more sound strategy and strategic initiatives that you can actually move forward with. Now, there are also some tactical considerations that need to be thought of when developing out a strategy. What will you create? So the types of content that you're going to create. Where is that content going to live? Another factor is, do you have a blog? Is your content going to be downloadable? Does it fit better in a resource center? Are you trying to publish your content in social media only? Not my recommendation or our recommendation as an agency. You should always be publishing on your website, promoting it in social media and driving people back. The money and conversions happen on your website. Who's going to produce the content? This is extremely important. Do you have the internal resources to create content on a consistent enough basis to fill the needs of your audience and outdo your competitors? If you don't have that internally, will you have to outsource? Who are you going to outsource to? So take these things into consideration when you're developing out your strategy so that you make sure that you allocate budget appropriately and you have the right people in place. Which brings us to governance. Governance is who's actually going to do the work. And when we put together governance, this is really going to be like a racy, right? Whose role is it to really be responsible, and who's the approver, and who's consulted, and who's informed, or in this case, informed. Sorry for the typo. So in governance, we literally will put an individual's name into a spreadsheet as to what their role is so that we know that it's Jill's job to take the content that's been created, log into the website, and publish that content. If you don't have that assigned to a specific individual, then how do you know that it's getting done? The same thing comes with the approvals of content process or anything that we look at for getting things implemented. If you don't create governance and assign it to specific individuals, things don't get implemented. Without implementation, you will see no progress. Next, we're going to talk about owning your audience and how just very important that is, and how critical and crucial it is to revenue generation and growth of your organization. So first, let's define an audience. Audience is going to be, oh, wait, we missed something. Oh, here we go, sorry. So your audience is anyone that's engaged with your organization in almost any fashion. So that engagement really should lead to providing personal information, their email address, their job title, their first, last name. And that's showing that they're expressing some level of interest in you and your organization. They've freely shared information with you. And we're going to go through in a moment a tactic you can use to help encourage that. So now looking at the three types of audience, we have what we call short-term audience. This is the least valuable. These are people that have landed on your website and you put a cookie or a pixel in their browser, and now you're able to retarget them with ads for the next 30, 60, 90 days. But that's it. You don't have any personal information, and if they don't engage with you in that time, you completely lose that audience, and you have no opportunity to really get them back or to stay in front of them unless they come back and visit your site again. Next, we have non-owned. And these are going to be your social media followers. Now, this is a great audience to have, but what happens if Facebook goes away tomorrow? Now, I know I'm sure some of you are snickering and thinking Facebook's never going away, but I'm sure that people felt that way about MySpace and Google Plus, and neither of those exist anymore. So imagine if your whole audience existed there and that went away. You just lost everyone that you were talking to, everyone that showed interest in your brand. So this is beneficial, but we want to make sure that we drive that non-owned audience back to our website where we can capture their information and turn them into our owned audience. So our owned audience are going to be people that have given us their information and said that they want to hear from us. They've expressed a deeper level of interest. And these are people we can stay in front of and continue to nurture along through different tactics to stay engaged with them. That's really where the big value is. And to illustrate that further, we can talk a little bit about a company like Domino's. So a decade ago, Domino's was failing. Their stock was in the gutter. Their pizza and product was terrible. So they came up with a clever ad campaign, but beyond just their clever ad campaign, they also started to build in tools and resources for consumers that allowed them to continue to own and build a solid audience by creating an app and tracking where your pizza is and other tactics that have helped them build a massive audience. In fact, recently they've their CEO has started a whole new initiative that they're advertising and marketing, which is you can get points toward free Domino's pizza by taking a picture and submitting it of any pizza that you buy from anyone, whether it's a DiGiorno or whether it's from one of their competitors or whether you made it at home. Now, what is the purpose behind this? The purpose is clearly that they want to capture your information so that they can market to you. They're willing to give you free pizza to get your contact information. If that doesn't tell you the value of an owned audience, I don't know what else can. Other than they built 15 million users through this process. And we would argue that 15 million user database is a major competitive advantage. So what Domino's can now do is instead of trying to advertise right before Super Bowl for pizza, they can track every purchase you've made, what your preferences are, when you buy pizza, what nights you buy for the family, what nights you buy for yourself, and they can now email you and address you with specific messaging that is directed toward you as an individual. And this is something that, again, we find to be a massive competitive advantage. So much so that their stock went from $3 a share to $295 a share in a decade by implementing and owning their audience. Here's another example of the power of owning your audience and the value. Dollar Shave Club. They last year sold or were purchased by Unilever for $1 billion. These guys had a very clever ad campaign. It was a subscription model. Through that subscription model, they built a massive user database. Now, does Unilever really need to sell more razor blades? That's not what they're after here. Unilever paid $1 billion to get that audience so they can cross-sell and cross-promote other products that they have in their, in their portfolio. In fact, just recently, Schick bought Heritage Shaving for $1.4 billion. This just happened a couple of weeks ago. So another example, Schick doesn't need new razors. They need that audience. It gives them more that they can sell to and more people they can get in front of. So owning your audience is critical. CMOs, this is something you should really be working on and having your teams involved with business owners, CEOs. This is something that if your CMO is not doing, you might want to have that conversation or pursue what tactics they can put in place to begin to do that. Next, we're going to talk about back into this budget aspect. So we know that and this is from the CMO survey from Deloitte, and this is for all in marketing budget. So we've got some industries here and what they spend out of their annual revenue in their all in marketing, so traditional and digital. Some of these industries like energy, again, another typo, is one that they don't have to put in a bunch of money into their marketing budget because they usually have an area that they do business in. And when you're in that geo-specific region, you only have one option of a power company to use. But consumer packaged goods, they have to put in a massive amount of their annual revenue in order to stay in front of their audience because people just aren't brand loyal. Things change with the seasons. So think about that when you're looking at budgeting. And so CEOs, if you're not giving your CMO and your marketing enough budget to get those results and you have crazy expectations, you're going to see that failure. And this is one of those things that leads to the high turnover of a CMO. So allocate the right money to get the results. Then the next thing is to look at how that budget is being allocated and through what channels it's being used. So traditional media and digital media, we are seeing year in and year out more of that all-in marketing budget shift from traditional channels into the digital media space. And we're going to continue to see that. So if your CMO, if you're not allocating the right amount of budget to the right channels for your organization and you're stuck in some of these older tactics of traditional media that don't have the traction or are really difficult to track, you might want to rethink what you're doing here and how you're approaching this. CEO, on the flip side of that, you might want to rethink who you have in that role if they're not allocating the right dollars and they're not moving forward with the technological advances that are happening within the digital and marketing sphere. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about customer journey and the importance of mapping that customer journey. So what is the customer journey? The customer journey, it's all the steps that your customer is going to take to solve their problem, and they're going to do it with or without you. And if they're doing it without you, they're doing it with your competitors. So it's pretty important that you really do take a look at mapping out that customer journey. And some things that follow with that are the benefits that you see between having a mapped journey and an unmapped journey. So organizations that map their customer journey see a larger return on their marketing investment. They see reduced customer service costs. The number of social media mentions go up. Customer referrals go up. Your average sales cycle shortens. Upsell and cross-sell opportunities improve. Now, something like the average sales cycle, imagine if right now your sales cycle is 3 months from initial engagement to the time that money is received or the conversion happens. If you could take that 3 month window and reduce it down to 1 month, that's 2 additional months of revenue that you can get from a new customer that previously you would have never seen and you cannot get back. So think about things like that when it comes to mapping your customer journey and the benefit that it can have to your organization from a revenue standpoint. Next, we'll talk about creating the right content and the right type of content. Now, writing every day for a year like Noah did isn't necessarily the right solution. Now, it worked out for him, but it doesn't work out in the digital marketing or content marketing space. If you're just cranking out content for the purpose of cranking out content, because content is king, I'm using air quotes right now, then you're missing the mark here. You need to be thinking about the right types of content for the right type of audience and producing it at the right time. Things like journalistic headlines are killing you when it comes to creating copy for the digital space. Nobody is going to search, read this article before your next workout if they're looking for tips on how to improve their cardio training in the gym. They would probably search something like tips for improving my cardio training in the gym. So let's think about that when we're creating headlines, something more along the lines of this. How much, we're here in Arizona, as Brad had mentioned, we're having the cooler weather now, but here real soon, we're going to be getting to the hot weather. And, we see the sun, 300 days out of the year or more. So this is a big thing in our area. How much does solar cost? How much can I save with solar? These are things that people really are going to type into a search engine. And if you're creating content with titles like that, you're more likely that your content's going to get found organically and become a traffic driver and potentially converting content for your organization and for your business. So think about that when you're doing topic ideation. So from the topic ideation standpoint, these are some of the types of content that everyone wants, but conversely, it's the types of content that people are scared to create, using topics like, should I fire my CMO, right? Sometimes these things are a little bit scary to produce, but it's a good topic. Like cost and price. People are searching for how much does your product or service cost? What is the price of it? Now, in some industries, there is not a static price like us. We're in digital marketing. There is no, this is how much digital marketing costs. But we can create a piece of content that can explain the variances in digital marketing and how to budget for digital marketing. Problems and issues. People are trying to solve these problems on their own. Remember when I earlier said that they've completed a lot of their journey before they ever talk to somebody. So produce that content that helps them along that journey to the point of being getting them in front of a salesperson. Versus in comparison content. This is bottom of funnel. This is what people are looking for before they purchase. Be honest if you create this type of content, but don't be scared of it. Reviews, these are huge. This is from an advocacy standpoint. It's very important for your organization, but again, bottom of funnel. It's what people look for before they make a purchase. So if you're not soliciting your customers for reviews of your service and then using those reviews to help convert new customers, you're missing out on a huge opportunity here. Best and top, so lists or things that really highlight some of the best attributes or features of a product or service. When people are doing searches, it's something that they use quite commonly, so create content to meet that demand. Resource pages, this would be technical guides and things that are really again, bottom of funnel, but are things that people look for when they really want to know the details of the service that you provide. So provide those types of content for folks. Bottom line is you need to be answering questions. There's a reason that search queries are called queries. People go to Google and they put in questions. Create content that answers those questions, informs your audience, makes them smarter buyers. This will help in creating a much more healthy client base and customer base for your organization. So I said that we'd talk about a tactic to be able to help own your audience. This is what we call hub and spoke. And this is something that is a great way to be able to generate more or a larger database of contacts. So a hub would be any type of really meaty content or maybe engaging content that people would be willing to trade their information for. It could be a quiz or a test that at the end has, give me your information if you want your results. It could be an ebook, a very large, robust piece of content that is extremely informative. In the case of something like an ebook, you can then take that piece of content and break it into bite-sized chunks and then put that content into a variety of other formats in order to create the spokes and then promote those spokes through different channels with the call to action back to where we want to capture their information. In that capture point, I would recommend that you use something that's a low barrier of entry here. Don't ask for their social security number, first name, last name, email address, something very simple that somebody would be willing to trade that information for. But once you have that information, now you're able to nurture these people along and provide them with other content that helps move them along their journey. This has been floating around the web for a long time, and it's funny because it's kind of true. The best place to hide a dead body is page 2 of Google search results because nobody goes to page 2 of Google search results. So keep that in mind when creating your content. Make sure that you use optimization best practices before publishing that content so that we increase the likelihood that that content is found. How critical is optimization? Well, 93% of online purchases begin with a search. So pretty important. 91% of searchers never click past the first page of results. So keep that in mind also. When was the last time you went to page 2? And even more important, 53% of website visits are driven by organic search. Over half of the traffic that comes to your website is coming from organic search. Don't overlook optimizing your content and your website before you publish anything. How about promotion? Going back to just churning out content and why that's not a good idea, but looking at the landscape of content as it stands now, organizations have been churning out content for years now, and it's created a lot of content bloat and not good content across the web. So if you want your content to be found, you need to promote it. You need to put it in front of your target consumers. Check this out. Maybe 71%. Why does this not all the way show? All right, well, I'm having a glitch here, folks, but what this should say is 71% of the most successful B2B content marketers are using paid methods to distribute their content. So if you're not using some paid tactics to promote that content to your audience, it may be tough for your content to be found. So let's give it a jump start. Let's put it out there in front of the people that are looking for it. We got to pay to play anymore. Next thing we want to think about is our website and how people engage with our website. Remember, form follows function. So to the casual observer, looking at the design and how your website's laid out may not be functional when it comes to that user experience. What is obvious to you may not be obvious to your audience. If you've paid to get them to your pages, make sure that you're putting tactics in place that help improve their user experience. This comes into conversion rate optimization. So let's do a little exercise from CRO and look at how valuable this can be to your business. So let's say you get 150,000 visits a month to your website currently. Now, for us, when we do some optimization to a client's website and do some content creation, we find that within about the first 3 to 6 months, we're able to increase their organic traffic by 25%. Now, if we take that growth and those amount of visitors per month, and we look at a 2% conversion rate, which is pretty good conversion rate, we can start to do some math here on the value of that increase to traffic. So if you're currently getting 3,000 leads, it's 150,000 visits a month, 2% conversion rate, 3,000 leads, we increase that by 25%. Now you're seeing 3,750 leads per month. That's an increase of 750 additional leads that you wouldn't have had without doing that optimization. Now at $500 a conversion, if that's your average order value, we find that you've just now increased your revenue by $375,000. That's a pretty, that's great, right? That is a good boost to business right there. But let's jump that conversion rate to 3% and go through the same exercise. So again, at that 3% conversion rate, we take those 3,000 leads and now we boost those to 5,625 leads. At the same order value of $500, we're now looking at a $1.3 million increase to revenue. So if you're not looking at how your users are engaging with your website and analyzing how to improve those conversion rates, you are missing out on untold amounts of revenue. CEOs, if you're not questioning your CMO or your marketing for conversion rate optimization and they're not involved in these tactics, you need to ask them why. CMOs, if you are not engaged in conversion rate optimization tactics, I'm asking you, why not? This right here, it's very clear as to why you need to be doing this. In fact, if you want to learn more about this, next month, we're going to be doing a webinar on CRO where we're going to have two of our conversion rate optimization experts doing a webinar. So I encourage you to join that. And I'm sure Brad will tell you more about that at the end of today's webinar. Now back into lead nurture. So lead nurture is we've captured their information, we've improved our conversion rates. We're really looking at, doing the best we can with the traffic that we're getting to our website, the traffic that we're paying to drive there. So now if you've got a database of 50,000 individuals and your average order value is $150, there's $7.5 million of untapped revenue sitting in that database that you have. This is something that you should not let languish and just sit there. Use some email tactics, use some lead nurture tactics to keep these people engaged and stay in front of them. What you typically want to do with this, and my recommendation would be, think about that customer journey and think about delivering the right content to them along that journey. So if we use a hub and spoke model and we capture somebody's information, then we don't want them to go back to search and continue that journey without us. This is how we keep them in our customer journey, by sending them emails that present to them the next piece of content in that stage and help move them along in that journey through appropriate calls to action and appropriate content that we're positioning and presenting to them. In fact, B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. Email is the preferred channel, and this is amongst all age groups when it comes to communication. So I know that there's maybe some hesitancy or trepidation with sending out too many emails or bothering people, but remember, they've given you their information. They've said they want to hear from you. Let's not be shy about sending them content and sending them information and keeping them engaged. With something like this, I also recommend that you implement some conversion rate optimization techniques and tactics so that you can split test and see which subject lines work better or the proper frequency, when people stop engaging, when they start unsubscribing. Keep those things in mind and make sure that you're testing this so that you can always improve upon the email campaigns that you run. Conversion rate optimization is not just for your web pages. Conversion rate optimization can be applied to pretty much anything across your organization. Now, here's something that a lot of people miss, okay? And this is agencies and organizations alike. You must build processes. Now, as an agency, we have mapped all of our processes internally. In fact, this is a picture of the hallway wall outside of our office where we literally mapped every process throughout our agency. And what did this mean to us and to our customers and partners? Greater efficiency. We have less errors within the content and stuff that we create for our clients. Also, we have less kickback on any of the things that we're creating. Our approvals processes work quicker. And more importantly, to our partners and our customers, is we are more efficient with the money that they are paying us. So their budgets go farther and net them greater results by us mapping our processes. You should be doing the same thing internally. Understand who touches everything, how the whole process works, and by mapping that, you'll create those greater efficiencies internally. So in summary, you need a documented strategy. Start there. You need to assign the appropriate budget toward your goals. You need to understand your customer journey and what it takes for them to convert. You need to create the right content for your audience. You need to optimize and promote your content. You also need to be implementing conversion rate optimization. You need to be involved in conducting lead nurture and following up and keeping people engaged. And you've got to put processes in place. So keep those things in mind. It is a good checklist to use as you go forward. Remember, CMOs have to get buy-in for all of this, and they have to get that buy-in from the CEO. So that collaboration and those open conversations need to be happening, and realistic expectations need to be set. CEOs, if you are sitting there and not providing what is needed to compete today, your CMO will never be successful. I think it's important that you understand that there is a difference in the way that your CMO and your marketing is working and their involvement in what's happening within your organization. So in the old way, marketing really was just involved in creating more awareness, and sales took it from there. But marketing is more heavily involved all the way throughout that awareness and consideration and handing off to sales, and oftentimes very heavily involved in sales and in that advocacy stage. This is pretty obvious when we look at the car buying experience and how that has worked traditionally. And we no longer need to go to a car lot to find out about cars anymore. We can find it all online, right? That's how we do our shopping. They'll bring it to our door. We can buy it out of a vending machine. So keep these things in mind as far as that way that your CMO's role is much greater than it ever has been before. If you're not looking at long-term solutions, because when it comes to digital and organic, it takes time. If you're looking at just budgeting for the next quarter and tactics and strategies for quarter over quarter, you're missing the boat. You need to be looking at long-term strategies. You can't be cycling your CMO out every 6 months because things haven't gotten the traction that you wanted to right away. It's a long-term investment. Give them the budget that they need, give them the lead that they need in order to bring you those results in the time that it takes. This is what we see from across our clients from organic traffic growth over a 2-year stretch. As you can see, over time, it gets much, much greater, and there's a lot more return on that investment. Execution without strategy is expensive. There's no doubt about that. But strategy without execution is demoralizing. Thank you for taking some time with me today. I appreciate it. Again, my name is John Triplett. I am a senior marketing consultant here with Vertical Measures. You can reach me through any of these social channels at any time you'd like. Feel free to follow me, ask questions, follow up. I'm always happy to provide some advice and some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. So we're going to jump into the Q&A. We actually have one right off the bat from Shelly, and I think, John, you and I can kind of tag team this answer. It sounds like Shelly comes from a small startup. So her question is, what advice would you have for a marketing lead at a very small, less than 10 employee startup? How much of this CMO role transfers to that startup single marketing person? And I can get the ball rolling. I think, anytime you're dealing with a startup and you are wearing many hats as a CMO or a single marketing person would, you have to find a strategy that works within your own scope. And a lot of the times that starts with content creation, proper ideation, and focusing on answering questions that your audience is commonly asking in Google. And what I try to start with, if you have a good idea of your personas or your target audience, is try to start ideating content around those needs or those common challenges, and ask around that 10-person team that you have there, because they might have some great insights on what questions they're getting asked from prospects or people through social media engagement. What are they talking about? And if you can start that conversation, I think you're already ahead of the competition regardless of size, because what we're still trying to teach to people, like John mentioned with these journalistic headlines, is you're not trying to create newspaper headlines. You're trying to be the most valuable and helpful resources possible for your audience. And in turn, that will turn into brand loyalty, brand trust, certainly brand awareness. And when it comes time to make a buying decision or purchase decision for a service or a product offering, that's when you strategize around that customer journey, so that you know that a piece of content is hitting that persona at each stage of the customer journey, ideally turning them into a customer, but also as an advocate for your brand. And advocates can be a really powerful weapon for small marketing teams, because those advocates can do a lot of the work for you based on really positive interaction with your brand, a really solid product or a service. But thinking strategically and thinking outside of the box with a small team to get some of that marketing juice flowing. I don't know if John has anything to add, because I just kind
I,
of took that from you, but
no, I agree. I think that really don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't overwhelm yourself. Be methodical. Create a plan. With anything, I think, to Brad's point, understanding your audience and who they are and creating content that speaks to them, and answers their questions and helps move them along that buyer's journey, that customer journey, is going to be important. But make sure that you create a realistic timeline for yourself to get these things done. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do too many things at one time, because you'll never get any one thing done. See a project through to completion, implement it. Move to the next step, see it through to completion, implement it. Otherwise, you'll have a bunch of fractured tactics that just don't line up.
one common saying, Shelly, that we have at the office is we try to avoid being long on ideas and short on execution. So really identifying the ideas that are going to generate the most return on your investment, focusing on those and doing those really well. So John, thanks again for joining us. I did want to highlight this is your first year going on tour in Digital Summit. How are you enjoying it so far? What's your favorite city? What can you share?
Digital Summit's been awesome. I was, of course, a little scared at first to stand in front of an audience of hundreds of people and talk about digital marketing, but after doing it now, several times, it's really it's so much fun because I get to talk about something I'm passionate about. I get to share it with people. It's I have a over a decade of experience in this, and I don't necessarily sometimes think of myself as an expert, but apparently I am. So it's been a good time. And as far as like favorite city, you know what? I can't really have one. I've been really all over the West Coast, and it's been a bunch of fun. It's a lot of fun cities and good people. And I was just in Kansas City last week and ate so much barbecue. It was it was great, and really fun people. And the whole digital summit and conference people that I meet are a lot of fun. And it's been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to doing it long into the future.
So what's the title of the workshop and where can people see it?
So my next city will be Portland in the middle of next month. I believe June 11th and 12th will be in Portland. The workshop is title is so long that it is how to move the customer, how to move your customers through their journey with a solid digital and content marketing strategy.
I think you got it. Look for that customer journey presentation if we're in a city near you. Thank you. I was on mute there. Look for John in a city near you. Look for the customer journey presentation. It's highly reviewed, highly sought after. It's a great presentation and get you started on your winning digital marketing strategy. Also, a reminder that we will be sending out the recording and the slides of this webinar early tomorrow morning. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again, John, for presenting a great webinar. We are really excited for next month's webinar. John mentioned with our CRO experts, Zach Bramwell and Jeff Putnam. Registration will begin in early June and will continue throughout this month. So until then, I'm Brad with Vertical Measures, an Investis digital company. Have a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend. Thanks, everyone.